A good speech is like a pencil. It has to have a point. Today we're going to cover lessons 1 and 2, looking at the rhetorical situation as well as the rhetorical canon, the modes of presentation, and understanding more about the art of rhetoric and public speaking. Let's begin with the rhetorical situation. In the rhetorical situation, there are 4 components. There are the speech, the occasion, the speaker, and the audience. Let's begin by looking at the occasion. There are 3 different types of occasions, general occasions that all speeches fall under. In other words, when you're asked to give a speech, they'll typically fall within one of these 3 areas. The first one is ceremonial. This is a celebratory speech that is focused on praise. So examples of ceremonial speeches would be toasts at weddings, eulogies at funeral as you're praising the life of an individual, as well as award speeches. So when we look at special occasion speeches, these are ceremonial types of occasions. Secondly, we have deliberative. In this political season, we're going to be looking at a lot of deliberative speeches. So this is where a politician has the occasion to be deliberative, and they're going to convey a speech to their audience about the future, their plan for the future. And so how they present that plan will give them credibility with the audience and win favor. So deliberative is concerned with the future and presenting a strategy. Finally, we have forensic, and forensic speeches are concerned with the past. In other words, I'm going to render judgment about the past. Good example of this would be maybe some of you are pre-law majors. So you're going, hopefully, maybe you're thinking about being a trial lawyer. In the end of the trial, you give a closing argument that you're trying to render judgment about past events in hopes that the audience or the jury is going to be persuaded. So typically we have these 3 occasions. The future, the present, being deliberative in the present, and then the past in forensic. Secondly, we have the speaker. Now, as Aristotle was looking at what makes one speaker more effective than another, because remember they were understanding that it was a huge civic responsibility, and those people who were better speakers obviously were more influential. So he said that all speakers should encompass these 3 appeals, and they are logos, which is logic, pathos, which is emotional appeal, and ethos, which is credibility. In Aristotle's mind, he said that the speaker should be viewed from the audience as having logic, logical appeal. What information do they bring to the topic? How do they arrange the material in a logical order that makes the audience buy into their message? Secondly, pathos. And pathos is emotion. So let's look at possibly advertising and PR majors, journalism majors. You know that the best story is something that tugs at the heartstring, that creates identification with the audience. And so a narrative is always a wonderful way to create pathos, or that emotional appeal for your topic. And then finally, ethos. Ethos is credibility. Now, Aristotle saw ethos as, of course, only being when that speaker stepped on stage and they had however many minutes, let's say 5 to 7, to convince the audience not only of their message, but their credibility in presenting this message. So for Aristotle, it was the credibility that the speaker is presenting to the audience in that time frame for the speech. In today's society, as we have so much mediated or social media, you have a presence out there, and so people know about you if they're going to come listen to your speech, just like I'm sure that many of you got on Rate My Professor to look me up before you registered for the class. My ethos or credibility is almost built before you ever have any experience with me. And that's something as a professional moving forward that you're going to have to take into consideration. So we have logos, ethos, and pathos. As a speaker, those are your 3 appeals. Let's look at the speech. Now we have an occasion. We know what type of speech we're asked to create. We have the speaker. We know that we need to embody these 3 appeals within our speech and our delivery. And then we have the speech itself. We're going to create, and we're going to go over this later on, an organizational pattern that makes sense for the topic at hand. But in preparing for that speech, it's going to be much like writing a paper. You're going to write out everything on paper first, and this is a preparation outline. A good example of your preparation outline is within your Blackboard in that speech assignment description and evaluation document. We have an outline of what all of the elements that should be encompassed within that preparation outline. So in this, it's full sentence, and you're writing out all of the logical order of your information and how you're going to present it. This helps you prepare for the speech. Secondly, you have a presentation outline, and a presentation outline is the 3x5 index cards that we allow you to have for the speech, to have bulleted information. Remember last week we talked about orally citing sources that you have to source within your presentation or your speech. So you might want to write down your sources, names, dates, New York Times, some type of documentary that you pulled that information from, because you're going to have to be saying that in your speech as well, incorporating that in. So the presentation outline is more of kind of, just help to keep you on track and to make you feel like you've got a little bit of support with you. You're not going to be reading from that, as your presentation, your speech should be extemporaneous, should be conversational, not written. And we'll go over types of speeches as well, or presentation. Finally, we look at audience. As a speaker, you need to realize what type of audience you have. Do I have a voluntary audience, or do I have a captive audience? Because this may really decide how you're going to present information or interact with the audience. First of all, let's look at common ground. In any type of situation with any audience, you have to create common ground. You have to create some identification with the audience, a message that resonates with them. So you may be very interested in your topic, but how are you going to make it interesting to your audience? How are you going to bring information that makes them feel like, I should be interested in this. This impacts me or affects me. So the audience is always asking, what's in it for me? You as a speaker have the responsibility to answer that question. So you're going to create common ground with whatever topic that you bring to your speech. And then you're going to realize whether it's a captive audience. A good example of this would be your classes. The classes that you have mandatory attendance, and that if you're not there, there's some penalty for it. That's a captive audience when you're there. The voluntary audience is more of one that goes to a speech occasion because they're interested in the speaker or the topic of the speech itself. The University of Alabama does a wonderful job bringing speakers to campus to talk about a variety of topics with students. We have sports stars and news anchors and politicians that come to speak, as well as artists and scientists. If you're interested in that individual or in their topic, you may choose to be a voluntary audience member at that occasion. And then finally, as I kind of glossed over there, exigence. Exigence is the issue or the problem in the speech itself that you are trying to bring to light, to educate the audience about, or to kind of illuminate possible solutions for. Now, you're not trying to solve the exigence or the problem or the issue, but you're trying to educate the audience about it. So exigence is the topic, the issue, the problem that is embodied within the speech. Now, in your labs, you're going to be watching a TED Talk, and you're going to be answering these questions about the short TED Talk. What was the exigence? What was the issue that was presented in the speech? And then the elements about how did the speaker bring about pathos? How did they create an emotional appeal? How did they establish credibility? Was it logical information that they brought in a logical manner? And so you're going to ask these of the video that you watch in lab, and then their type of delivery as well. For the moment, we're going to go ahead and skip over this and move on to the rhetorical canon. Now, Cicero said, okay, so if I'm examining what makes speeches effective, what is the process for that? And what are the elements that need to be within a speech for the speech to be effective? And he came up with 5 components. The first one is basically the beginning of a speech process. In other words, invention. You have to brainstorm ideas and topics that you're going to create a speech around. We want you to be creative about this. But not only are you going to brainstorm topics, but information that you want to bring as well to that audience or to that speech. So creativity is invention. Secondly is arrangement. In a later lesson, we're going to look at logical patterns for a speech. So chronological, spatial, problem cause solution, cause effect solution are all arrangements, how you choose to arrange that information so that, if you remember from the previous lesson, we talked about signposting. You're going to tell the audience what you're going to tell them. You're going to also reveal the arrangement of the speech. I'm going to talk about this is my first main point, my second, and my third, according to that pattern. Third is linguistic style. Linguistic style is the language choices that you choose. Much like writing your signature, a signature is also linguistic style. It's very unique and individual to the speaker. If you look at an example of, let's say, Rick Bragg, many of you may not know who that is, but he's a Pulitzer Prize-winning Southern author and writer, and he's very Southern. If you ever listen to him speak, he kind of embodies that, right? He has Southern colloquialisms in his speech, and he speaks with a Southern accent, and he uses terms and phrases that are unique to him as his linguistic style. He also brings words about that create vivid imagery with his audience and kind of brings them along in the message. So linguistic style is very important. You want to be interesting to the audience, so you have to choose the words that you're going to use to express your ideas. Fourth is delivery. Now, delivery is nonverbal. It is our gestures, our voice. So not only are we possibly doing something that non-verbally adds to the message, but with our voice, and politicians are coached to do this. So don't ever think that they're just great speakers, because they're not. But if you look at wonderful politicians, let's say Ronald Reagan and Obama is very good at kind of almost modeling after a Baptist preacher. Now, Reagan was an actor, and so he knew how to make dramatic pauses, and so does Obama. In his first run for presidency, his stump speeches were very dramatic in the way that he delivered them. He would use pauses very strategically, and then have a soft voice, and then build, and then build, and then build, and then deliver a line that roused the audience. And so politicians are coached to do this, and some are better than others. But delivery is nonverbal, which is body as well as voice. And then finally, memory. Memory is how we're choosing to create something that is memorable. So are we repeating phrases? Are we doing what we're asking, which is that kind of signposting along the way so that we create memory with our audience? They're going to walk away and our message is going to resonate somehow. Now, let's go ahead and look at modes of presentation. I talked about politicians, as we're going to watch them. The first mode of presentation is memorized. We do not want you to try and memorize your speeches. It comes across as very flat. You don't have a lot of inflection and interaction. And also, if you're memorizing your speech and somehow you lose your place, which of course is a great thing for those presentation outlines, the note cards, but if you lose your place, it's much more difficult to recover. So, but there is memorized speeches, and then you have manuscript. Now, in the picture, I'm showing Obama giving a political speech, and if you look at all of the presidents in the past and many of the White House correspondents now, anytime that they're giving a speech, you can see the teleprompter in the side. Sometimes they have the glass teleprompters that is they're very difficult to see. But if you look right here, he has the teleprompter and he's actually looking at it. It scrolls the words for the speech in front of him so that, of course, he's practiced and rehearsed so that it sounds conversational, but he's also kind of reading the speech as it goes. That's manuscript. And then the third is extemporaneous. This is what we want you to do in lab. We want you to speak conversationally. You've practiced, but you're also delivering it in a way that seems conversational to your audience and kind of more engaging. So when we look at the people that have done TED Talks, in the last year, there was a man who researched the top 50 TED Talks. And he went back to those people, the top 50, how many had been viewed? They had been viewed the most on, let's say, YouTube or TEDTalks.com. So he asked interviewed those top 50 TED Talk speakers, how many times had they practiced that 15 to 18 minute speech? The average was 200 times. 200 times. So while we want you to be extemporaneous, we also know that we expect you to prepare and to practice so that it comes across more naturally. Finally, let's look at types of outlines, and I did already talk about this. The preparation outline, full sentence, that you're going to turn in with your informative and persuasive speech, as well as the presentation. And here's a nice representation of a note card that will help you move forward and keep your place as you go along. Now, just to end, here's a great quote from Oprah Winfrey. And she said, when she was asked about luck, she said, "I don't believe in luck." She said, "I believe in the moment of opportunity meeting preparation." In other words, you have to prepare to meet those moments of opportunity. In this class, of course, it's a little more structured. We're giving you assignment for the informative and the persuasive, and then finally the elevator pitch. But in life, as you move forward as a speaker and a professional, you need to understand that preparation is the only thing that is going to allow you to truly capitalize on any opportunity that comes your way.